everyone, and welcome to The Good Life for Nebraska Seniors. My name is Donna Blum. I'm your host, and today I have the pleasure to be joined on the show by Jason Lenagh with Enlightened Financial Planning. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Donna. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to see you. I love your outfit. You look great.
Well, I love yours. You look great too.
Stepping our game up today.
I think we kind of color coordinate here.
100%.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Well, Jason, really the whole purpose of this show is to provide our audience with some helpful information, to be a trusted resource, and to provide some uplifting conversations. So I'm looking forward to this conversation with you. By the way, you and I have known each other for a while, and you are actually my financial planner, and I'm so grateful for all the services you provide. And you're more than just my financial planner, you're my friend.
Yes.
So thank you for being here. But to get us started, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your journey, your background? How did you end up in financial planning?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to be here. And, I appreciate the opportunity to share a little about myself, because I think it's good to know, who I am, where I come from, and really why I'm so passionate about what I do. So, growing up, we didn't really have a lot of money, but what we did have was family, hard work. Those were the important things. And, my dad was one of the hardest working men I've ever known. He had 2 to 3 jobs at a time, and, these were blue collar jobs. So he was working as a custodian for a middle school. He ran a cleaning business in the evenings, which he'd have me help him with. So, I know what it's like to clean toilets and empty trash cans. It taught me a really valuable lesson in life. It humbled me, but, it showed me what the value of a dollar was. Real quick, it also taught me I didn't want to clean for a living. So, when I finished school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, though. So I tried almost everything. I'm not kidding you. And I don't even know if we've shared this before.
I don't think I've heard this story.
Yeah. So I was a bricklayer. I installed sprinklers. I was a roofer. I painted houses. I sold magazine subscriptions. I think I sold knives. I did overstock at Hy-Vee. I did everything. I was a garbage man hanging off the back of a truck in the middle of winter in Omaha, Nebraska. So if that tells you anything.
I love it.
All of this ended up landing me what I'm pretty sure is everybody's dream job, as a bill collector.
Not mine, sorry.
Yeah, seriously, for 12 years, I called people every day, getting yelled at, cursed out, hung up on. But I promise you, it wasn't all that bad. I made some of the most valuable relationships of my life at that job, including my wife of 17 years, who we have 2 beautiful children, Verona and Desmond. My wife's name is Jill. So after that, I ended up getting an opportunity to work at a large investment firm. And I'll tell you, honestly, going from calling people where people were dreading seeing my number come on the caller ID to people that were excited to take my call, that was a wonderful change. So I definitely enjoyed that. And I've been doing finance for about 14, 15 years, somewhere around there. And I'll tell you, looking back, I realized that I had to learn how to help people, whether they had millions of dollars or were on the verge of bankruptcy, because how much money you have is not what's important in life. Everybody deserves to be happy. And financial decisions have a real stress on that happiness. So my purpose is to help people make financial decisions that lead to more joy in their lives, plain and simple.
I've seen that in the way that you've counseled my husband and I in our financial decisions. We talk a lot about our dreams, our goals, and how to make decisions that are going to help us get there. So I love that.
Right. And figuring out how to make decisions, especially for seniors or those that are near retirement or recently in retirement, think about all of the decisions that come along with it, right? Healthcare, long-term care planning, taxes, what to invest in, how to take money off of accounts just to replace your income. Social Security timing, all of these things. It's like, how in the world is the average person supposed to know how to get all these things right? I might as well tell them to put a bullseye at the end of a football field and give them a Nerf gun on the windiest day of the year. But if you miss the target, it might mean you run out of money. So it's very, very important. Unfortunately, there's really not a clear-cut way to get answers, right? Mm-hmm. Currently, it's like, well, maybe I'll talk to a friend or a family member and get advice there. I might talk to different advisors and ask them, but you're going to run into variations of all different experiences, different opinions, and no lack of conviction on whatever it is they're selling, right? And if you're really bold, you go down the rabbit hole online and you start researching products and information, and that's certainly going to lead to information overload, right? So there really has to be a framework for decision making that takes all the opinions and the information overload out of the equation. So that's what we've developed. We've really put together a 4-step framework to help people make sense of the decisions in retirement.
Yeah, that's good. So I can speak from personal experience. That question of what if I don't have enough money? It can keep me up at night, that fear. And I will be the first to admit that so much of this in the financial world is well over my head. So it's just reassuring to know that I have a trusted advisor. Gives me peace of mind knowing that I'm getting good advice. And so I guess the point is here is that I mentioned it before, seeking wise counsel is always a good idea. So there's no need to stress about it or to feel like you have to gain all of this knowledge yourself. There are people out there like Jason who have that information and are there to come alongside of you and help you make these decisions.
Yeah. And, I would say one of the most important things that anybody should ask themselves, when they're trying to evaluate or make any kind of financial decision is you really have to start with what is the purpose of financial planning, right? Because I had to ask myself this question, what is it, if my clients knew the answer to, that they wouldn't need me, right? And this answer really gives you the foundation of how all financial decisions should be made. And the answer to that question is how long they're going to live, right? If we knew how long we were going to live, financial planning would be easy. You'd know what to invest in, you'd know what insurance to buy, when to retire, how much you can spend, all of it. If you found out you only have 2 years left to live, your financial decisions become drastically different than they do for the average person who's really trying to solve for an unknown timeline, right? God didn't give us an expiration date, so we don't know how long we're going to be around. So a financial plan and all the decisions that come along with it really need to be made to solve for an unknown timeline. So that has to be the first core fundamental of any financial plan. It's not about how much rate of return or how much a product costs. It has to be, I need to figure out first what it's going to take for me to never run out of money, whether I live till 120 or, so financial decisions really have to be made with that first concept in mind. And then everything else starts to, everything shows itself as to what you should do, depending on your situation.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah. I'm actually personally glad I don't know how long I'm going to live.
Right. 100%. The most important thing is knowing that no matter how long you live, that you're not going to have to worry about it. Right. And there are ways, I think one of the most important things, and really the first step of any retirement plan should be, is knowing that right there is the core principle that you're trying to solve. So now, what are ways that a person can run out of money? That really starts, pulling the, the layers back. So
yeah. So this first question I had, and we might have already started touching on it a bit, but to begin, what does a solid financial plan look like for someone entering or already in their retirement stage?
Yes, this is a really, really good question. And I'm going to use an example. Let's think about the different cars that we've owned over our lives, okay? Can you think of your very first car that you owned?
Yes.
Okay, what was it?
The first one that I bought was a Mazda MX-3. It was a white little sporty car. I loved it.
Okay. How much did you pay for it?
Oh, goodness. I don't remember.
You don't have to tell, but I was hoping, like, when we bought cars when we were younger,
it was,
if we want proof inflation exists,
it was,
got a lot cheaper.
Yeah, like it was probably, I don't know, I want to say maybe it was around 10 grand.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
mine's gonna,
Okay.
So I had an 87 Honda Civic hatchback. It was this little gold car. It had a stick shift and a cassette player. It was like a little go-kart. I loved driving that car, and it cost me $300.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't get cars for $300.
No, you can't.
So then my next car, I got a 2-person Ford pickup truck, and I had a rock band sticker on the back of it, and all my friends asked me to move when they needed stuff. And my next car, which was actually my favorite vehicle of all, was not because it was some expensive luxury sedan or anything like that. It was because my wife and I found out we were pregnant with our first child. And because you can't fit a car seat in a 2-person truck, we needed a family car that we could actually, so we got a Jeep Grand Cherokee. The point of the story is retirement planning is a lot like the different vehicles that we've owned throughout our lives. They change through the seasons, so do our retirement planning needs, right? But here's the core lesson is that those cars weren't going to get very far if they didn't have gas. Your retirement plan's not going to last very long if you don't have income. So the first step of any retirement plan is figuring out how you're going to generate income for the rest of your life, right? The industry has not done a great job of teaching people about retirement planning in this lesson specifically. It's become very heavily on, look at this account balance, right? And how much money do you need? What's your number to retire? It's done a lot of damage if you think about it, and even just emotionally. So I have a story about a couple clients of mine. And years ago, they came into my office, sat down, had good small talk, and they were successful, just started the journey of retirement, and they liked to travel. Well, they had the biggest trip that they have ever had in their lives, and this was kind of like a big celebration, right? It was a cruise. They were going to all sorts of cool destinations. Spent probably 2 years planning this thing, and it was not cheap. So the trip had came and went. And this is where they really got into what brought them into my office. The trip took place in March of 2020. And I don't know if you remember what happened around that time. It was when the United Kingdom decided to leave the European Union. So they called it Brexit. The market had dropped 20 to 30%, which happens, 2 to 3 times, 1 to 3 times in any given 5-year period. It happens more often than we realize. So it wasn't anything unique there. But I remember how, we'll call her Mary for privacy, looked over at John and she said, "You were looking at your phone the entire time, worried about our account balances. It ruined our vacation." And when I think about, here you have 2 people that did all the right things. They sacrificed, for their children and saving money, and also they could have this future where it should be stress-free and they can experience some of the finer things in life, right? And to have it ruined by a different, like something that's totally out of their control, right? And I can't blame John because if your account drops 20% in, a short period of time, it's probably going to change how you feel on a really expensive vacation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's one thing that I think is important. If your stress levels are going to be impacted because of something out of your control in retirement, your peace of mind will be too.
Right.
So having an income plan is the first step and the most important thing to figure out how to make sure that you have income without ever worrying about running out with really the least amount of assets that you need, right? So that's step one in the 4-step process that I use. We call it the Gestalt method. So the unique thing and reason we call it Gestalt method, and this is kind of a fun story, when you put two things together that are not alike, the total of the value you get is more than the sum of their individual parts, if that makes sense.
It does,
right?
yep.
So like the Belgian draft horses is a really good example of this. One alone can pull 8,000 pounds, but when you put two together, it's not 16, it's actually 24,000.
Okay.
So by putting all of these things properly together in a plan, you can create efficiencies. That's the reason we call it Gestalt. But it's really truly a simple 4-step process. And if you look at it through the lens of, well, what do I need to make sure I don't run out of money in the most efficient way? And there's a whole nother kind of explanation that can help a person know how to do this. And maybe I'll just take a couple minutes and walk through that.
Sure, yeah.
Because I think it's really valuable. Retirement income planning and creating an income plan is a lot like planning a vacation, primarily because the mode of transportation you take really matters, okay? My son and I were driving. This was actually a few weeks back before their spring break. So on spring break, we were taking our very first all-inclusive beach trip to Mexico as a family.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yes, it was amazing. But my son was a little bit hesitant because he was worried about flying. Okay. And we're coming home from basketball practice, and, out of nowhere, he goes, "Dad, do you think we can just drive?"
To Mexico?
That's right. That's right. And I kind of giggled. I'm like, "Oh, no, Desmond, we already have tickets bought. It would take a really long time," and kind of watching him in the rearview mirror. I can see his little wheels spinning. And he just came to a determined answer. He's like, "Fine, I'll just run." I'm just cracking up here. "Desmond, okay, let's do the math together," right? This is an opportunity to do some math equations and all that. So I said, okay, the average person can run 6 to 9 miles an hour, and you are really fast, so you got to be about 10 miles an hour. And Mexico is probably about 1,800 miles away, maybe 15, somewhere around there. So now if we think about it, you're going to have to eat, you're going to have to get some sleep. We're looking at an extra 2 months before we get there. And he's just like, oh man, I could tell he has to come to terms with his fear and he has to overcome it, which he did. And we just had an amazing time. It was so much fun. The moral of the story is, if you have the wrong investments when it comes to income planning, that's like running to Mexico instead of flying. You might get there, but I'll tell you what, there's less painful ways and ones that aren't going to cause so many blisters on your feet, right? The mode of transportation that you use for your income plan and retirement matters. And I think that we try to make it a little more difficult than it needs to be, because there's really only two kinds of income that you can plan for. You plan for income to pay for the things you have to pay for, and then income to plan for the things that you want to pay for, right? When it comes to planning for income for the things you have to pay for, it's good to line those up with if you have guaranteed lifetime income streams, okay? It's like Social Security, pension. And if there's a gap, there's ways to fill it. And then for your wants to pay for, that's where asset income comes into play. So I show someone a visual of what their income world looks like, and it's on a circle, right? And if you think about it like a tire, if one of the sides is popped way out, or you have too much of something over here or too little of it. It could be like driving a flat tire, or a overinflated one. And we can all visualize what a one tire way overinflated feels like. So we really want people to understand that step one is figuring out how to solve your income in the most efficient way with the least amount of assets, right? The part about filling in your yearly expenses is definitely worth discussing because it relates to real estate. I like to use real estate as an analogy to explain how you can generate cash flow and income off of your investments. So there's really two ways you can get money off of accounts. You can either just sell off assets and consume it, which is why John from our story was worried when the account value goes down. He's like, well, now if I have to consume it for something that comes up out of my control, healthcare needs, a new roof, whatever it is. When you're relying on consuming your assets, that's where that stress comes into play. Right? But if you have it in a way where you understand what you invest in and how it works, then it's completely different. So what I mean by that is if you think about each one of your shares as a little piece of real estate, right? So now when we think of an account or an investment, we look at a balance. We're like, okay, there's my balance. Oh, it went up. This is wonderful, right? But inside of that is actually little workers for you. You know what I mean? So now if I think of my share inside of there, like a little piece of real estate, most people don't realize this, but the shares that you own inside of your work accounts, your retirement accounts, they generate cash flow. We just don't see it because it automatically goes to buy more.
Right.
Which is a wonderful thing because that gives us the magic of compound interest.
Yes.
Right? And we love compound interest. Warren Buffett calls it the eighth wonder of the world. Right? So when you think about compound interest, I love this example, and I'm going to borrow your piece of paper real quick because I want to illustrate how valuable compound interest is. Now, if I take this piece of paper, you hold this one for me.
Okay.
If I take this piece of paper and I fold it, and then I fold it again, okay? How many times do I have to do that before this reaches the moon?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. Yeah, tell me.
42.
42 times.
I would only have to do this 42 times.
To reach the moon?
To reach the moon.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
That illustrates how powerful compound interest is. Because on the last couple flips, we couldn't do it. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Compound interest, when you're working and you're reinvesting shares and you're taking all that cash flow to buy more shares, it gives you that magic. When you stop working and you start taking money out of the accounts, compound interest can work in reverse. And I think a lot of times we think that if the value of an account drops, we just need that same return to get it back to even, right? So let's say the account drops 20%. And I would think, well, I need 20% to get back. But the reality is the math changes when you stop putting money in and start taking money out. So now, conceptually, I might get into the weeds here a little bit, so my apologies. But think about it real simply. If I have $100,000 and it drops down to $80,000, right? That 20% drop that I said happens, 1 to 3 times every 5 years.
It's out of our control.
Exactly. To get it back to the 100,000, 20% only gets me to 96,000, right? So I need 25% to get back to even, okay? If you're taking money out of your account, and the standard in the industry is 4%, as they say, you can take it out, that 20% drop over a 3-year period of time is now going to require a 41% return to get back to even. Selling shares to cover your retirement income is one of the fastest ways to put an early expiration date on your retirement income. Does that make sense?
It does. So in a nutshell, you want to keep your shares.
Yes.
And you want to live off of the gains. That's the income part, right? Yep. So the shares continue to work for you.
100%.
But as soon as you sell them, they no longer work for you.
Right. So now, if you think about it in terms of real estate, and I have this portfolio of little houses that are going to be there to cover my income, and if instead I take that income and buy more shares, and turn around and sell them. Well, if the market's down, I might have to sell more houses, you know, and that's where retirees start getting that feeling in their stomach,
Right.
because they know something could happen tomorrow, and even just a new roof or whatever it is, right? So here's the good news though. You can naturally redirect that cash flow into the ability to cover those bigger yearly expenses from your investment accounts. This actually makes it much easier from a planning standpoint, right? So step one, we figured out how to fill our guaranteed need income gap with the least amount of money possible. We now know how much we would need to cover, because we can do the math and know how much cash flow, you know, your portfolio can generate without selling shares. And what happens is most times you find out you have a surplus, right? Because imagine as a retiree and you just see an account balance and you think to yourself, well, I hope this lasts, right? And I'm nervous to spend because I don't know if I start consuming this, I may have to be a burden on my children because I need to go to a long-term care facility or whatever it is, right? There's so many really, really unknown instances that cause stress. And that's why if you have a framework to know how it works, these are the decisions and the steps that can help you realize you don't need to have that stress.
Right.
And if that stress is gone, that just means you get to have more joy in life, more joy in retirement.
And that's what we all want, don't we?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's so overwhelming is the unknown, right? It's almost like the closet in the, you know, the monster in the closet.
Yeah.
And then if we realize it, it's just a, you know, Christmas pajamas hanging up, you know, with the little candy canes on there. It's not the boogeyman.
Right.
Knowing how these things work and how much you need to cover your lifetime income allows you to see if there's a surplus available. And that's step two. So step two, finding your surplus, allows you to really build your plan how you want. Because not everybody wants the same thing, right?
Yeah.
If you discover you have a surplus, there's really only 4 things you can do with it if you're not spending it. You can de-risk your life. You know, you can find things that might take risk off. There's products that can protect against long-term care and those types of things if that's really important. You can invest heavily and just be aggressive with it. The nice thing is if you want to invest, this can go up and down because your income's taken care of, so you're not depending on that, right? But you're intentional about it. Otherwise, maybe if you have extra cash flow that you're not spending and you have charitable endeavors, imagine if you would be able to give more to the, you know, causes that mean so near and dear to you.
I would love to do that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would really love to be very financially successful for that reason.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, I know that there are other steps, and we probably don't have time to cover those, but you know where to go if you'd like to learn more about those steps. And we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon. Unfortunately, this conversation has just flown by.
Yes.
But, you know, for the people who are watching today, let's say for someone who hasn't done much like formal financial planning yet, what would you suggest as the first steps that they can take today to start getting on that right track?
You know, I would say that a lot of times the idea of financial planning and do I need a financial planner, and I don't want to talk to somebody because maybe they're going to try to sell me something that I don't understand. There's so many thoughts that kind of go through our minds that create this intimidation for for planning in general. Right. And I would say that making sure that it's clear and understandable and have a process that's not product generated is really, really critical. And don't feel like what you have worked so hard for is not deserve the attention that it should, because every dollar that you have in your life is so important, and it represents all the hard work and sweat and energy that you've put in, and to make sure that it goes as far as possible for you and the people you love in the future, right? And the reality is most people's financial pictures, I've been doing this for a long time, look very much more like a financial junk drawer. You know what I mean? Accounts all over the place, no real plan from taxes, and that's the real fun part. When you look at, now I know how my plan is taken care of, and I can be intentional with a surplus, and I didn't even realize that I had a surplus. There's so many different things you can do to make sure that the money you've worked hard for stays in your pocket and doesn't make Uncle Sam the primary beneficiary of all of your efforts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes you see from a tax planning standpoint, and that's actually step 3, is creating tax efficiency. People have a heavy imbalance across, they have way too much in the tax deferred money. Mm-hmm. The money in 401ks that we haven't paid Uncle Sam. It's kind of like a gas card that Uncle Sam gave you when you were much younger, and he said, hey, just put whatever you want on this gas card. We'll take care of it in the future. And yes. Now you're like, oh my gosh. But there were other gas cards you could have prepaid one, yes. The tax-free accounts where you pay for right up front and they can't change it on you later. Yeah. And then there's the one that you pay as you go. But the point of that is, it doesn't matter if you are young, just about to retire, or 70 some years old. Tax planning is a really, really important part. You want to have a balance across the board so you have flexibility through lots of different tax environments. Right. I've dealt with some really tough cases where a spouse lost another spouse, and now they have all of these, assets mostly in tax deferred accounts, and they're in a single filer status. They're getting kicked into the highest Medicare tiers, all these things, right? But there's things that you can do. So I don't want to feel like anybody out there doesn't benefit from having their overall world looked at by somebody. And personally, I would be happy to help anybody who has questions. It doesn't cost anything to go to somebody for a consultation, just to have a conversation, ask questions, those types of things. So
yeah, that's great. So we are kind of running a little bit out of time here, and I wanted to make sure that we touched on, just very briefly, we're coming up on, or maybe we're already in it, something that's called the Great Wealth Transfer, mm-hmm. right? So a lot of seniors, they've worked all their lives, they've accumulated net worth, and now we're looking at how that net worth now is going to be handed over to the next generation. Can you just speak to that at all? Like just maybe some words of wisdom that you have for our watchers who have, are facing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are so many components to this question, and it's not just a dollars and cents question. The dollars and cents are, the amounts that are going to be transitioning from the baby boomer generation over the next 20 to 25 years. It's 70 to 90 trillion. It's
a lot.
It's a lot. And to think about, even on just an individual basis, the kind of impact that has on your family and the future. Communication is the most important part, right? I think a lot of people may feel like money is a taboo thing. You don't talk about it, right? Mm. But the reality is, communication is going to be much easier than you realize, and fulfilling, and it sets the tone for really what it is your wishes are. Legacy planning and asset transition is it's a really, really special thing, because it's no longer about just you as an individual. It's an imprint that's going to go on potentially for generations, right? Your kids, your grandkids, their kids. And if you do it right, there are some very powerful ways to do that. The financial planner hat on my head would say, this is about taxes, is a really big part of it, right? Because there's so many different ways to structure things, whether it's trusts or, certain family businesses, or, through life insurance. There's just a lot of different ways to transition assets that can really make sure that Uncle Sam, like I said, is not your primary beneficiary. So
Right.
that piece alone is really, really an enjoyable part, because it involves open, honest communication with what's important to you in your heart, you know, and you definitely don't want to turn over a very large sum of money to somebody who doesn't realize it, isn't prepared for it, and doesn't know how to, you know, be a good steward of it. So
Yeah. All right. Well, Jason, I just want to thank you so much. We could talk for on and on about
Yes.
this topic, but I want to thank you so much for the advice that you've shared with our audience today, and I would love to have you back on the show again sometime to talk maybe more in depth about the
Sure.
4 steps and about the great wealth transfer. But I also want to thank everybody for watching today. Have a wonderful day.